everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Angelou if you're new here, and for today's video, I'm going to share some book recommendations and some tips that helped me get back into reading, which I hope will do the same for you. This video was actually requested by a subscriber. My first video, she commented, tips on how to get back into reading, please. Joke lang, kapatid ko lang yan. But that's what I'm doing today. I have fast-paced, easy-to-read books that I think are very helpful for starting to read again, and some tips that I think will be helpful in trying to establish a reading routine or habit. Yeah, let's start. So for my first tip to get back into reading, you need to find your why. Why is getting back into reading important to you? I know it may sound like parang corny or whatever, but it will help you in the long run to know why you want to read. As for me, it was because I am a writer and a creative, and reading just helps me activate my creative juices, inspiration for the things I write. I've never forgotten how therapeutic it is, especially when I was a kid, and getting attached to characters and rooting for these characters. It really helps with your empathy, and it really helps with your understanding of human interactions and connections. That is why I wanted to get back into reading. And you have to find that reason. It could be as simple as you want to cut back time on social media. It doesn't have to be a deep reason, and it doesn't have to connect with your work. It doesn't have to be for self-improvement or whatever. It could be for entertainment purposes only. It helps that you have this main reason why you want to do this, so you could remind yourself of why you do this, especially in days you don't want to do this. So having said that, my first book recommendation is the book that got me out of my reading slump, my 6-year reading slump, and that is Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe by Benjamin Size. I can't remember why I chose this book. I just found it on Goodreads and it has a lot of good reviews. I was looking for something popular, so it will be easier to find a copy online. The characters Aristotle and Dante are very likable. I think the reason why Aristotle and Dante really worked for me, because I've always loved stories about friendship. I wouldn't say that Aristotle and Dante is a very exciting book, because it's not. We're just following this friendship of the two boys. What will make you continue reading is you're going to root for these boys, and you want to see their growth, and you want to see them discovering themselves. It was beautifully written, and it won so many awards. It connected to my why, my reason of why I wanted to go back to reading, which was improve my writing, improve my craft. If you want likable characters that you will really care about, and a friendship that you will really root for, I would really recommend Aristotle and Dante. For my next tip, in order to get back into reading, you need to stop being a snob about it. You have to pick something easy, something that is popular, widely read, that have a large readership. This means that the writing is really accessible. You won't be like, alam mo yung mga books na hindi mo alam kung anong nangyayari kasi, I don't know, medyo dense yung writing. I know that among people in their 20s, there's this concern that when you read YA, you are perceived as someone shallow or all that, because when you're an adult, you're expected to read deep and serious books. You have to throw all that out of the window and trying to enjoy reading again. At least in my experience, having an easy starting point is very helpful. You have to remind yourself that you're allowed to have an easy starting point, and you don't have to dive into the hard books right away. Your choice of books really matter when it comes to getting back into reading again. So I would really recommend a very easy book that is well loved and exciting, and I think the perfect book for this is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I haven't met anyone who didn't like this book. I remember I had work during this day that I started reading Seven Husbands, and I think I accomplished very little that day because I read this in a day, like in a whole day, because it was that exciting. It's the fictional universe that the author created in this book is very well written and very exciting. We follow Evelyn Hugo, biggest Hollywood star. She's already in her late 70s, I think, in the present time of this book, and she's talking to this writer who she chose to write her memoir. And that's basically where the book begins. We follow her journey to becoming the biggest Hollywood star possible and her 7 marriages. The characters, although not all of them are very likable, they're very real, and I think Taylor Jenkins Reid, when she writes, I also read her another novel, Daisy Jones and the Six. There's something about her writing that her characters feel very real. Actually, after reading Evelyn Hugo, I can't even believe that Evelyn Hugo isn't real. If you haven't read in years, if you haven't picked up a book in years, and you really want to start with something exciting, something so alive, and something so refreshing, this one is my first pick. Trust me, just trust me on this. You need something easy, something fun, something enjoyable, something very engrossing. Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo is exactly that. So my next tip is make it a habit. I know this is easier said than done, but when it comes to reading, all it really takes is continuously doing it. Just like every other thing that you want to do, you just have to be consistent, especially if you want to make reading a part of your life. When I was just getting back into reading, I committed to 5 pages a day. That takes very short amount of time, and you just have to allot that very little time. If you stick to that, you will easily finish the book in a month. And when things started to get easier, I added more time to my daily commitment. So now I read 30 minutes per day. This is every morning. As long as you're consistently doing it, you are bound to create the habit of reading, and eventually it will become a part of your life. I would highly recommend watching this video. It's a really great video about getting back into reading. They actually calculated how much time you need every day to be able to read 1,000 books in your lifetime. Anyway, for my next book recommendation is Severance by Ling Ma. This is one of my recent reads. I think I only read this year. This was one of those books that I finished in one sitting. I started this around 8 p.m. and then I read until 5 a.m. It was those kind of books that I tried to put it down, but I just couldn't sleep because I was still thinking of the story and I wanted to know what will happen next, and so I just lost sleep and finished it. It's about a pandemic. I would say though, if you're not in the right headspace to read something about dystopian thing, world-ending catastrophe, especially we're living in one right now. If you're not in that right headspace, don't read this because this is about a pandemic. We follow Candice. So Candice is regular worker in New York. She has an office job, a publishing job. She tries to come to terms with the effects of the pandemic. We go back and forth to life during the pandemic to her life before the pandemic, and it was interesting to watch her life change. I really liked how it presented questions about how we work, how fucked up this work thing is. It poses a lot of questions about capitalism, money, greed, and all that. I think if you're in the right headspace, this will be the perfect time to read this because it talks a lot about how we live right now. For my next reading tip, this is actually a tip that I also need to learn for myself. And this is, you have to remember that you're allowed to drop a book. If you're not enjoying the book anymore, don't force yourself into finishing this, especially when you're just trying to get back into reading because you won't love what you're doing. This actually happened to me after I read Aristotle and Dante. I dived right into Trick Mirror by Gia Tolentino, which is a good book, but it wasn't the right time for me. The writing was very dense, full of references that I didn't get. It wasn't good for my journey of trying to read again. So I put it on hold, and eventually I finished it and I loved it. But it's important to be able to recognize that you're reading the wrong book. Your selection of books can determine if you will continue this reading thing. I think if you just choose the right books in this journey to reading again, you will be able to make reading a part of your everyday life. Just so that you can enjoy the process of getting back into reading and make it easier, it's important to let go or put a book on hold if it doesn't speak to you. If you don't drop a book that doesn't interest you anymore, what will happen is you will drop the act of reading. You don't want to let go of this book, so ang nangyayari, hindi ka na lang magbabasa kasi hindi ka excited dun sa book. So what you will lose is the act of reading because you're so persistent in holding on to this book you don't enjoy. And we don't want that to happen. So my next book recommendation is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. I follow Eleanor Oliphant, and she has been alone for most of her life. Something very tragic happened in her past, and ever since then, she's just trying to get by. She had this office job that is basically everything that is going on with her life, and she doesn't have a lot of friends. Her weekends are spent with pizza, vodka, and it talks about isolation and loneliness, the kind of loneliness that you don't know you're lonely because you're so accustomed to it, not realizing that you need someone. It's such a unique way of storytelling. I think we get a peek of how Eleanor thinks. This is such a lonely book, and it's not an exciting book in any way. So you might think, why am I recommending this in this video? I'm recommending this because this book is very moving. It talked about mental health issues, it talked about alcoholism, it talked about abuse. With all these things I'm saying, it might sound a very heavy book. It is, but the writing is very funny. Made the book special. It was tackling these heavy topics, but in such a funny and blunt way. For my last tip for this video, take the pressure off. I would suggest to have this low expectations muna. Stick to low expectations first because, I don't know, you're bound to fail. Let's be honest, you're bound to fail. Don't feel like you have to finish 4 books a month or 3 books a month right away. Let yourself grow into this new thing you're introducing to yourself. Some of you may have been bookworms as children, but times are different now, you know. A lot of distractions exist. You have an attention span of a goldfish. Actually, in my first year of trying to read again, I only set a goal of 15, I think, and I was able to exceed to 20, and it felt much better because I exceeded the goal compared to if I went crazy and be like, I'm going to finish 30 when I know full well that I'm only just starting to read again. It will be disappointing. So yeah, my tip is take the pressure off and lower your expectations. I would highly suggest trying audiobooks. If you're someone who is just reading again and you have a hard time focusing on, you know, words, I would highly suggest audiobooks. And actually, this next book that I'm recommending is a book that I really liked and I listened to as an audiobook, and it's Less by Andrew Sean Greer. This book was really great as an audiobook. We follow Arthur Less. He is an author in his 50s. His ex-boyfriend is about to get married, and since he wants to avoid all the possible conversations, he wants to stay away from this event. He decided to accept all the invitations of literary events. So this book is divided into different chapters that happens in different countries because he's going around the world just to avoid his ex-lover's wedding. It is very well written. It's actually a Pulitzer Prize winner. Also, one of my favorite aspects of this book is how it talked about aging and the fear that comes with it. Our main character is already in his 50s and he felt like very unaccomplished. I really loved it. I really loved how it talked about heartbreak and loneliness and being alone in the latter parts of your life. This video is not sponsored by Fundador. Those are my book recommendations and tips to help you get back into reading. Just remember that it's not a race and you don't have to finish a certain amount of books every year. Just enjoy it. I hope you found a book that you're interested in, and I really hope it helps in one way or another. If you read any of these books, do let me know and tag me on Instagram. Angelo made me read this or whatever. Angelo made me read this or whatever. I'm kidding, but you know, feel free to do it. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Happy reading, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!